All right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another coffee Q&A. Today's topic is something that I thought was almost got my goat on this one, right? So we'll get to that in a moment. So today's the coffee Q&A. Welcome back to the show. We do coffee questions and answer here at 10 a.m. Eastern, most Monday through Fridays. So if you have the time to come join us. If you're watching as a replay, come join us on the live stream or leave comments and tell me what you wanted to know about. Craig's with us. What's going on? I think all coffee is a blend. Hey everyone, welcome. How are you? So today's topic, as you saw in the title card, what do they call it? Thumbnail, is a comment that almost had me triggered. Not triggered, but it's one of those things where sometimes my curmudgeonly self will kind of come through, and that when you've been involved with something for a long time and to a point where you just think that, oh yeah, everything, that's just how it is. That's common sense. But really, it's not. Like, I came across this comment on my feed, and I was like, my first reaction was like, what are we talking about, right? But then I thought for a moment, and I was like, that's not that. I said, that's just me being pedantic and being stupid, ridiculous, right? I think this is a genuine question that people will have, and it was probably a question that I had when I was starting out. So the question is, with blends, how do you brew a consistent cup if all the beans are mixed? Unless you portion each bean for each cup, help me understand why blending is a thing. So there's a couple things that are in this comment that are layered. Mom, good morning to you as well. How do you brew, so with a blend, how do you brew a consistent cup if all the beans are mixed? So the presumption there is that the beans, the single origin beans, are going to be so very different that they would need to have their own specialized precious brewing individually in order to get the peak performance out of them. And perhaps there could be something to that, right? And when I read that part, I was like, come on, man. Like, what kind of question? Like, come on. But really, I think that's an earnest question. Like, especially if you're someone that comes that's been exploring coffee in a world of enthusiasts who are very narrowly focused on single origins and brewing the most precious brew out of each of these single origins. I can totally understand how you'd come wonder, like, hey, especially this whole world where they've come about where, like, it's all about single origin. And, like, the single origin is the most precious and the only true valid coffee to be drinking for any serious coffee person. And I'm like, oh God. But if you come from that world, if you come from that level of introduction, I totally can see what you're thinking, because you're like, well, if the people mix these coffees together, they're obviously different. They're obviously not going to be brewed to their peak performance. Perhaps. I'll say that. Naomi, good morning to you. Now, a blend, as we know it in the public sphere, a blend is more than two or more coffees that have been combined together to create what is hopefully a distinctive whole. Ideally, it would be the sum is greater than its parts. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's the complete thing. But there's different coffee out there, and there want to create a blend and like one of those reasons would be to follow a certain experience for your case customer, the guest, to experience. We see this in many different pursuits, in many different fields of blends being created by producers who want to, give consistent flavor profile. And I think one of the greatest examples of that is Budweiser. Budweiser beer, and a lot of this is hypothesis because I don't drink beer normally, and I don't drink Budweiser. I just don't drink that much, regardless of what the background suggests. But Budweiser is, whether you consider it to be America's greatest beer or you consider it to be piss water, it is extremely consistent year after year, batch after batch, day after day. It is always Budweiser, right? Much like Coca-Cola always tastes like Coca-Cola. Diet Coke tastes like Diet Coke. Diet Pepsi tastes like Diet Pepsi. These are all created, these flavors are all created by blending components together, different flavoring compounds, different flavoring whatever, to create this cohesive whole that is consistent. Now, in the case of, let's say, like Coca-Cola, perhaps their journey is a little bit easier because they can utilize different extracts to create their flavor profile. And by the time it gets to the extract level, I'm going to guess that it's relative. They get it to be relatively consistent, right? Now, if you get into the world of flavorings, which I was involved in myself in quite 20 years ago when I was involved in syrup manufacturing, we tend to think that flavors are very simple. Like, let's say, like one of the projects I was working on was strawberry, right? I had this particular idea of a strawberry flavor, and most of the strawberry flavors that I was tasting, it just didn't ring of the strawberry, this vibrant, fresh strawberry that's in my mind. I was like, man, this is the flavor of strawberry, but nothing else matched it. So we went to a company like Virginia Dare. Virginia Dare is a flavoring manufacturer. So there's Virginia Dare Flavors and Fragrances. And you go to these companies and you say, hey, I'm interested in creating buying some of your flavors. And I remember I think it was Virginia Dare. We were at Virginia Dare, and they were like, well, strawberries, we have, in our catalog, we have 225 strawberries. And I was totally new to this. And I was totally 225 strawberries. And he's like, but if those don't suit your needs, we can, create one that does. And I was like, it's like, what? There's 225 strawberries. And the reality is that if we think about, let's say, strawberry, and you think about when you eat strawberry, right? For each of us, there's a moment in that strawberry's existence. When you eat it, it's like perfection. You're just like, oh my gosh, this is the strawberry that I seek and crave. But you've also eaten strawberries at different points of its ripeness, from either unripe to overripe. Each of those are also strawberries. So if you could think about, let's say you break it down into let's just say there's, in this one variety of strawberry, there's 10 degrees or 5 degrees of ripeness flavor, right, that you've tasted. And only one of those is like perfection for you. Now, just say there's 5 of those, and now multiply that over how many varietals of strawberries there may be, and now you've got like hundreds of variations of strawberry. You're like, oh my gosh, this is craziness, right? Malcolm says, I'm very interested in the answer to this question. I never thought about consistency in day-to-day brewing with blends. Hopefully we'll get something that will help you have a good answer. Craig says that there used to be an old Italian roaster in Toronto who claimed a 14-bean blend. While it sounds ridiculous, what it really meant is that he could use that many coffees over time to keep, I mean, like, I don't know. I wonder if someone that talks about blending coffees in so much like so many different varieties, I mean, the logistics just to keep up with ordering all those coffees to keep them all in stock at one time seems craziness. But I agree with you. I think those could be good talking points just to allow him to buy a spectrum of coffees and maybe even allow for acceptable variances in his flavor profile throughout the year, which is something that's going to happen. So like I was leading up to this idea of going to these flavoring companies, you're getting all these different flavors of one flavor, or variations of one flavor. And that's a controlled environment. Now, when you come to other pursuits, let's say with Budweiser, now you've got grains, agricultural products that are coming in fresh. You have the hops, the wheat, or whatever they're putting in it. The wheat, the hops, right? And those are all being grown every year. And those crops, just like we see in coffee, those crops will change from year to year. The crops will even change from position on the farm. right? There was a point in my career where maybe it was like 2011, 2011, somewhere around there. I had thought that I had a pretty good grasp on coffee production at the farm level and like harvesting and like and like, coffee lots. And when we say, we talk about lots of coffee, right? Coffee lots, meaning that you go to you're buying a certain lot of coffee. Like, okay, this farmer has this coffee, this red bourbon from their farm. Oh, red bourbon from their farm. Perfect. And you're cupping, you're tasting. Okay, this is and that's a single origin. The geisha that you get from, let's say, the Tucán place down in Colombia, or you get it from Eladio Diaz, or from the Pepe Gijón, right? Yeah, there it is. Pepe Gijón has this geisha, whatever process, blah, 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 blah. Well, I'm at my friend's place, Andre, and we're hanging out. His family owns a place called Great Lakes Coffee Exporters, and they are in Kampala, Uganda. And I go there, I'm hanging out with him. And he said, hey, you want to do some cupping? And I was like, yeah, man. He's like, we're cupping day lots. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, these are the lots. So that what they were doing is that they were cupping day lots. And so let's say you have a farm, and let's say on this farm you have figured out there are 6 different plots of land. And each of these 6 different plots of land are growing, let's say, caturra, right? So you're growing caturra on all 6 of these plots. And these 6 plots are in different parts of the mountains with different exposures to sunlight and cloud and wind and rain and different mineral contents in the soil, right? The harvesters will go out to each of these plots, pick from that day, keep them separated, and process them. So now every day you have 6 different lots of coffee coming from each plot, one lot from each plot of land of that farm. And we're cupping day lots. So we're cupping each of these plots on each day. So let's say we're cupping Monday through Friday. So this one plot of land now has 5 different samples. Those 6 plots now, there's 30 samples. And if you're doing critical cupping, now you're cupping 150 cups of coffee, right? There's 5. If you do full critical, it's 5. Usually it's 3. We probably did 90 cups, right? And you're tasting these coffees, and what are we looking for? And I was like, well, what is going on here? He's like, these are the day lots. And I was like, day lots? I was like, we do that? Like this, before this morning, that morning, I was like, yeah, I got a solid grasp on origin production. I totally know my deal. And then I'm there, and I'm like, holy crap, this is unbelievable. I'm just like, like, this is crazy. So what they're doing is they're taking these separate day lots, cupping them, evaluating them, seeing their flavor profiles, seeing how do they taste, how do they come together, because they're going to sell a coffee as one coffee. Now they may sell some of it off to other purveyors, or they're going to separate these day lots from different plots into a single origin release. In other words, they're creating a blend from these different days, different flavors, to create one whole cohesive flavor. And I was like, oh my gosh, man, what is this craziness? So a lot of times you'll have these producers who are doing this kind of work selling you a single origin, but that single origin is truly a blend of coffees from different parts of the farm to create a cohesive whole. So, while a lot of people, like someone like this gentleman might think that, I've got this single origin, it's amazing. Well, why would I want to blend it together? Well, your single origin that's amazing is from a single origin. It is from a single farm, but it is actually a blend, one that you may not have realized. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is just like after that company, I went back to the hotel room that night. I was like, oh my gosh, man, I can't understand it. I was really like, oh my gosh, I'm like totally like blown away by this. I was like, I just presume that you grow all this coffee on one farm, on one plot, and you just toss it all together, and that's it. That's all you have to do. You sort it and you toss it. It's fine. No problem. But no, there's so much more that's involved in it. And so many producers that I know that I've worked with do very similar type of work. Cupping day lots to put them together to decide this is our release, and this is the other release that we're doing. Blends, all blends. And when it comes to doing that at your home for an enthusiast and all these other YouTubers that are promoting these single origins, and I don't know if the YouTubers that are promoting this kind of thing either ignore this blending part or they just don't know. I mean, I was in the business for years before I learned about this. And so there's a whole world of blending that's happening to your single origin before you even get it to make it what it is. Now, of course, there are some single origins that are super, super small lots, like super tiny lots that they're not blending into a larger whole. And, we buy those too. Like I remember one time we were at a place in Costa Rica, and I'm with Efren Reyes, and we're like walking around, and he's showing me the patios, and he's like, this is our, I don't know, whatever process, pulp natural. It was a pulp natural, I think it was, a pulp natural. And I was just looking at it, he's like, and I pick it up, it's all drying on the patios, and I smell it, and oh my gosh, man, it had this beautiful mango tone to it. And I said, well, what is this? He said, well, this is something we're playing around with. I said, how much is here? I said, oh, maybe 2-3 bags. I said, 2 or 3 bags. So, I told him, I'll buy this coffee right here. This coffee right now, as it is, right here, finish processing it, and then send it to me, right? And that's the coffee I bought. And sometimes you do crazy things like that with small plots because it just had such a beautiful aroma. And it turned out to be a wonderful coffee that we had for a while. But sometimes you find coffees that way. And those truly are tinier plots, right? But that's probably from one part of that farm, one day lot, what would be considered a day lot. Free Range is with us. Was recently tried a blend of Arabica and Robusta and found it very nice. Yeah, you can find really nice blends. And by the way, have you tried I saw your comment from yesterday's video about trying the eggnog latte. Let us know how it turns out. We want to know. So that's the background of Robusta, of the blending, right? So when it comes of the single origin. Now, when it comes to blending, let's go back to his question here. How do you brew consistent cup if all the beans are mixed? So when you're finally blending your coffees, well, first of all, let's say you take these coffees. I've got a couple coffees here. We've got this Paisa coffee from Paisa. It's an older anaerobic washed Harvest 2023 from Finca El Camilo. We've got this Ethiopia Dukamo Rumudamo. That's from Ethiopia, from Cafe de Bola, a beautiful coffee on its own. We've got this one, the Nicaragua Matagalpa community coffee. And then we have this one from Uganda, Equator Blend, right? So this is already a blend. But what you can do is, if you're interested in understanding blends, it's really about blending is really about creating something different than what you might have. So each of these coffees has a unique character to it. Perhaps with the exception of this would be a blend by the roaster. The rest are essentially single origins, right? However, this and I'm sure this is the same. Like this particular one, this Paisa, this is a Finca El Camilo. So this comes from one family, one farm. Now, in the case of these two coffees, right, Ethiopia Dukamo Rumudamo, as well as the Matagalpa community coffee, these are coffees that are being produced in those parts of the world that are going to be coming from smaller producers. Like what happens, especially in Ethiopia and these community coffees, that the farmers that are growing the coffee itself are much smaller farmers, right? They have small land holdings, maybe 1 or 2 hectares of land, and they're growing coffee there. But especially, I'm sure in Ethiopia, maybe not, maybe to a certain extent in Matagalpa, but for sure in Ethiopia, chances are the people that are growing on these 1 or 2 hectares are not just growing coffee for a hectare or two, they're actually growing everything they need to survive. Their family is living off the land. They're growing not just coffee to sell, but they're also growing maybe wheat. They're doing animal husbandry to raise farm animals for milk, meat, eggs, things like that. So it's not like they have all these trees and that's all they have to do. They are, living off the land in many, many respects. But these are coffees that are being grown by a disparate range of people who may or may not be as well-educated, well-capitalized, or able to pay super close attention to things like soil content, harvest times. They're looking probably to pick the coffee when it turns red. Like it turns red, it looks like it's good. They're probably not going to be out there measuring with bricks measurements and doing all this scientific work to try to find the optimal moment to harvest those beans. And they're not going to have a crew of beans. It's probably going to be them and their kids just going out there and picking the coffee, and then they're going to put it in a bag, and then either they're going to drive it to the milling station, which would be, in these two cases, the milling stations would be the Matagalpa Community Coffee Station or the Dukamu-Rumodomo Station. And then they're going to, and then from there, those places are unlikely to keep those coffees separate, right? Because if you bring, let's say, 300 pounds of cherries to a mill, a big mill that's like these co-ops, it's unlikely they're going to keep your coffee separate. Unlikely. They may, but unlikely. They're going to put it all together and process it all together because it's much easier to process. If I keep 300 from each person's day lot of cherry versus if I just lop it all into 1,500 pounds of processing, so much easier. And in that case, we're going to get some mixing of varietals as well as everything we talked about before. So these are some of the things that are going to happen with these coffees. And then they're going to be processed and then sold as the single origin that we're buying here. Now, it doesn't mean that by itself would be a compromise situation. Like, these are really nice coffees. This Rumodomo is really beautiful, a beautiful natural processed coffee. And this Matagalpa community coffee is very nice as well. So they're not bad. But again, it goes back to this whole thought that these are maybe single origin coffees, but they're actually blends as well. Right? So we're still talking blends. Blends, again, that were coffees that were blended together that created a cohesive whole that somebody had determined that was good and they're going to buy. So the same thing can be done by taking all these different coffees. As a coffee roaster, you may be working with the green itself, or if you're a home enthusiast that doesn't want to roast coffee, maybe you're going to buy these coffees. Buy different coffees, and you're going to taste them as single origin. This is how you would do this at home, is how we would do this professionally, right? We're going to get the coffee samples, the green ones, and we're going to roast them up somehow. Meaning, what I mean that is that when we roast coffee critically for evaluation, a lot of times we're going to roast that to just past first crack, right? Just bring it up, it gets a good roast profile, but we're not going to take it too dark, because what we want to do by keeping it close to first crack is we want to highlight and accentuate any kind of defects that may be present in that coffee, because we're trying to evaluate it at a critical level to determine whether or not we should buy. Now, some roasters will do that, some roasters won't. Some roasters will take it too closer to the whatever production roast they're using, because that's what they're used to, and that's what their team may be used to doing to evaluate their coffees, and that's perfectly fine. However you want to do it is up to you, especially when you're just working on your own. Now, when you're working in an industry-wide setting, then there does have to be more standards so that everybody is like evaluating the same thing. But we'll take those coffees, we'll taste them, and we'll say, okay, I like this, I like that. And then I might think, okay, let's say like with the Espresso 99. right? The Espresso 99 is a good example. Espresso 99 is a coffee that we want to have really good body. We want to have good crema. We want to get flavor notes of chocolate, fruit, specifically berry fruit, and nutty finish. Those are the main criteria of general flavor characteristics or general coffee characteristics that I think about for our espresso. So when it comes to putting together coffees for that, it's about tasting coffees and thinking, okay, what coffees will help to fulfill that role, right? So let's say this Ethiopian Rumudamo may have very beautiful like blueberry tones. We'll use some of that. This Perla Negra's got a little bit of milky creaminess, right? Maybe we don't want some of that. This one's a little bit more brighter because it's got this anaerobic. Okay, we don't want some of that. Maybe the Matagalpa will have some of that body and that coffee. Maybe we'll use some of that as well. And then definitely, let's say this one is from, let's say this is, I don't know what this blend really is, but it's from Sippy Falls. It's going to be a Bugiso type of coffee, so it's going to have that body and that physicality to it. So perhaps we might take these, we might cup them and see what the flavor profiles are, or taste them, and then we like the components. We like them as they're really great coffees that can stand on their own. So the coffees that I like to use are ones that can stand on their own. They're not like, like collapsing on their own. But we want to be able to have, and that way it gives us a little more variety. So we can offer them as single origins, or we can use them in blending as well, right? So you'll take these coffees, you'll taste them, and you may just do something as simple as having them in the cups, and then you're just mixing them in another cup in different proportions just to get an idea of what it's like, what it might be like in the cup. And you kind of come up with some ratios. And then if you like those ratios, then you roast them, then you put them all together and you roast them. Now, in the case of like, if you're using roasted coffee, you might, taste them individually like that, blend them together. And then the next time you brew them, you'll blend them. Well, actually, let's do that. Let's do that. I was going to brew espresso, but you know what? Let's do this kind of thing. We're going to, and this could be a lengthy process for you, right? So let's say that we're going to use this one. This is the Bugisu. This is a Ugandan coffee. It's gonna, from what I remember, it's got a lot of good bass tones, a lot of good body. Oh yeah, that's good. Ooh. Okay, let's put that in here. What we're going to do is we're going to make our normal blend of coffees. So we're going to 24 grams, and we're going to say, let's have a smell of this. Kind of vegetal nose. Interesting. Free-range says that eggnog cappuccino is very rich and sweet, fun, but not my cup of coffee. I hear you, but I think that also, like, one of the things you might, if you want to explore it more, you may not want to. But I would presume that you probably went out and bought the eggnog, and that's one of the things about when you buy eggnog or when you buy products is that you don't necessarily have control of it. If you found it if you find it compelling enough, maybe consider making it yourself. That way you can control the amount of sweetness. I'm going to make a presumption that perhaps what turned you off was more of the sweetness, or perhaps maybe the heavy cream might be too thick, so you can always reduce the cream or reduce the amount of egg yolks so that the viscosity can be a little bit more to your liking, and then you can tailor it that way. So in case you're interested in exploring that more. Okay, so that's got nice fruit tones. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this, we're going to use a bit, let's just say 50% of this of this blend we're going to use. So we're going to use 12 grams. Twelve 12 grams. So let's say we're going to use 20% of 24 times point. Oops. Let's say you're going to use about 20% of the fruity natural, which I think that was it, right? 12. We just jumped. And now we're going to come up with the Matagalpa community coffee and go all the way up to the 24 that we need. Oh, okay, there you go. So there's our blend. We've got a blend here that we've just created. And this is something that, you can kind of do this on your own, just based on, if you have a bunch of coffees that you're like, oh, I know I have these coffees, I like them. And we're not tasting them separately this time to really try to figure that out. But we're just going to say, hey, we like these characteristics. Let's put these together in this kind of blend. Let me just get that heated up again. And we're going to get our grinder. Our lovely fellow Ode Gen 2, which is still alive, thank goodness. Here it is. Look at that. Gen 2 Ode. We've got a lot of coffee here. So now we're going to, I think we're going to leave it to whatever grind setting we have here. We're going to, can we see? We'll turn it on. Whoa. I do love the speed of this. Marcus says, from what I understand, the question about consistency is because when dosing your coffee, you might get much higher ratio of one bean versus the other. Well, yeah, well, yes and no, but here's the thing. So, like, I think I understand what you're saying. Well, your concern is that, let's say we have these three different coffees in these three ratios, in this one ratio to each other, right? And as you're pulling it out, you're worried that, instead of getting the 50% of the Bugisu, you're getting maybe 60% and less of the other ones. In the case, if we were just to take the coffee and mix it into a jar and then just kind of, stir the jar a bit, that certainly could be the case. However, one of the keys to blending is going to be homogenization of your blend. So, like, for example, let's say at the situation at Spro, when we're roasting, let's say we use these three coffees in a blend as green. We're going to roast them together. And then we're going to, and that roasting time, that, I don't know, 11 to 12 minutes, or that 10 to 12 minutes of roasting time and being turned in the drum is going to fully homogenize that coffee. Now, other ways you could do this, there's also times when we used to do a lot of post-roast blending. So you're roasting the separate components and then blending them together. In those times, we would actually have a big cement mixer almost, right? Big mixer holding 60 pounds of coffee, and it's just rotating. And you'd let that rotate for, I don't know, 20 minutes so that you get full homogenization of the beans. And that is a key thing. So if you don't fully homogenize your blend in some way, then yeah, you could certainly have that. And that's not to say that you're guaranteed 100% that every dose you do is going to be 50% of the Bugisu. It could change if there's just no way to control that. But you kind of have to live with a little bit of mystery in the world. Otherwise, you're just going to drive yourself crazy. Or you could just mix it. Or if you're really hardcore, you could just figure out your blend and then mix it live like this. Like here, I will expect that this will be a pretty homogenized result when we're done, right? So Marcus says, would a single origin provide more consistency in that scenario, even if it's technically a blend as well? I mean, it could. And here's the thing. So, like, when we're talking, let's say we talk about single origins. Let's not. I gave you that background because about single origins probably are actually blends. Only just to underscore that, blends are not bad. Blends are part of it. Even for these beautiful single origins, they're a big part of it. But try not to get too crazy in your thinking that, like, oh, well, those single origin are really blends. We should think about them as blends. No, they're just single origin. Don't complicate matters. Like I was like, I remember, because really, I sat in that hotel room that night and I was like, my world has been turned upside down. So we just try to keep it a little bit simple as the way we think about it. So we got our Cafec flour dripper. We're using the Abaca coffee papers. Which, I don't know if it makes a difference, this Abaca coffee stuff. I don't know. Okay, here's our coffee. I don't think I have it switched to the, I set the cut. No, that's why we're so abrupt and harsh. Okay, so again, we have to, I didn't tear it, did I? Damn it. This is so, okay, this is the tearing, this is what I'm not used to yet, is I have to tear it. Tear. Now add the coffee so we get the right ratio. Right? 24.8, 359. We're going to hit that button to start it. Get our hot water that has been off the boil for a couple moments. I think it's been off the boil enough that we can just go brew straight away. Okay, good. So would it provide more consistency? Technically, yeah, because it's had more homogenization of its components through the entire process of processing, and then through the process of roasting. Now it's fully homogenized, and really it's about to avoid those kind of strong variations. It's really about homogenizing your blend. Maku says, Naomi, you're slacking. Got to remind him to tear. I know, it's a terrible. I'm always forgetting that. I'm both heartened and troubled that you remember that. So here we are. 1 minute. We're going kind of fast. 162. I'm kind of abandoning my previous style of like 1 minute, 100 grams per minute. We're just going. Oh, Naomi's now slacking. That's all right. That's all right. That's all right. That's all right. I don't need to be called out every. All right. 1 minute, 23 seconds. I feel like I just want to go faster. I'm not worried about it anymore. I feel like I'm not worried about speed of brewing anymore. I'm just like, as long as it finishes within 3.5 minutes, 4 minutes, should be good to go. And I'm finding that even though we might start out with the grinds, the grinding from the ode, I'm kind of subconsciously finding that as we might start out with fast flow, but it kind of settles down and slows down. So even though we're ahead of the curve, I think we're going to end up right around the same place. What I'm really just trying to do now is just hold the water level, the coffee bed level, at the coffee and water at the same level throughout the brew. And what I'm really doing is relying upon the grind of the coffee to create the resistance to give us the right extraction time, or the ideal extraction time. So 230, 279. So this is catching up to it. So our water target's 359. We still have a minute left to go. So yeah, I think that even though we're pouring a little bit harder at the beginning, the grind is just that it will give us what we're looking for. Actually, what I have on the mind at the moment, for some reason, is washers. I need to get some washers. Need to go to Home Depot after this and get some washers. Just occurred to me. 340, 327. Oh, see, we could be surpassed by the time. All right, here we go. 39. And we're coming up on 43. All right, 4 minutes and we're pretty much done. All right, that's pretty good. Let's have a look at our elixir here. Now, actually, since we were talking about homogenization, what we could do is maybe just push it all together like this. We'll do a couple passes that will maybe oxidize it a little bit, but also help to guarantee that we've got a full blend or full homogenization of our liquid, just in case there might have been some kind of variation in the way that it brewed. So let's have a look here at the color. Looks nice and clear. I did catch it in time. Thank you, Naomi. What was the grind setting? Grind setting was 6. You know how on the ode there are the numbers and then there's 2 ticks between the numbers? So it's like 6.66. So it's on the second of the tick closest to the 7, which I don't think really means too much. I don't think. Like, I don't know if it would be the same if you have the Ode Gen 2 at home. I don't know if it would be the same setting. Or I don't know if you get the results. Same results. Okay, so here's the taste. Okay, so we're tasting it. So definitely lots of good body, lots of cacao, really nice bassy notes, really rich. But what's missing from, at least what's missing, what I would think is the fruitiness from the Ethiopia Rumudamu. Perhaps just on this quick initial taste, and it's still hot, so it needs time to cool to really experience it. Initially, I would think that maybe the next time I'd want to maybe boost the natural processed coffee to get a little more of that berry. I want to make that a little more apparent, but that's because I love natural coffee. I love blueberry fruit. Like, I want that to be a good pronounced element. Now, if you're not a natural fan, or if you're one of those baby haters that thinks that natural processed coffees are all defective, then you probably want to keep that down. But one thing to do is, as you're thinking about a blend or making your own blend and you're tasting it, now when you're tasting it like this, it's not necessarily just about the pleasurable hedonism that we talk about, just the enjoyment. Now it's about like, okay, well, I need to find something that's going to satisfy my desire. So perhaps we're going to think more critically about the coffee and how it tastes. And then we want to make sure that we're going to take the time to taste this coffee over time, so that as it cools down, we want to continue tasting the coffee to see the performance, right? So especially like in my situation as a coffee purveyor, I want to see how it performs over time, because the guest or the consumer will be, we don't know when they'll be drinking. We don't know how long they'll drink. It may sit on their desk for, half an hour as they sip at it. And in that half an hour, it's going to change. It's going to give different characteristics. So are all of those characteristics within an acceptable range? Right? And not necessarily are they awesome, but, hopefully they're good. Hopefully they are awesome. But the real question is also like, do they turn bad in some way that we don't want them to experience? Naomi says, I was curious since I don't do large brews like you're doing now. Oh, Craig says he's the baby hitter. I knew that was you, Craig. I knew. I do. I figured you were that guy. And then, so large brews, this is only 24 ounces. I mean, it's only 24 grams. How large a brew do you do? You can ratio it down. It's all about ratios. It doesn't really have to be any particular size. But I would think that maybe with smaller quantities of coffee, like I always think that the coffee should brew 3.5 to 4 minutes. I like that exposure range. So yeah, if I was using a lot less coffee, like I'm not sure how much less you're going to be using, perhaps maybe a notch or two coarser, right? Finer, right? Finer to increase resistance so that the water doesn't flow as much. But if I'm going for larger quantities of coffee, like say for example, when we're proofing the brewing at, let's say the food market where we're brewing 1.5 gallons of coffee at a time, or actually we're only brewing a gallon at a time. So we're using, now instead of using 24 grams, we're using 250 grams of coffee, 256 grams of coffee. So we need to keep that time. We're trying, in that case, because it's so much, we're really trying to do it under 5 minutes. But we will use a relatively coarser grind for that quantity. Actually, not bad. Not bad. Now, if you're someone that likes lighter, brighter, geisha, anaerobic, champagne processed, and all that kind of stuff, this particular blend probably will not be up your alley, because this is a lot of body, there's a lot of sweetness, this is a lot of development in the roast profile. We've got some coffees that are a little more dark, a little more heavier roasted. Like this is a little bit of a, oh, that's not a heavier roast. What am I saying here? Okay, so that's a relatively light roast. This Ethiopia is also a light roast. It is this, then it is this Bugisu. Naomi says, I never say I hate anything anymore. That just means I haven't come across a version I enjoy yet. So this one, it also, well, this is comparatively, you can see here, comparatively, the Bugisu is, where'd that guy come from? Okay, you go there. So comparatively, this is darker, right? But this is very light. So this one really accentuates the fruitiness. A little bit darker, very much. Now, in this spectrum, you might look at it and say, oh, this is really dark, but this is not really dark. It is dark relative to these two, but it is fairly a light medium, I would say. This is very light. This is probably like very close to first crack. This is just after first crack. And then this is a little more development, maybe just a few seconds after the end of first crack. Mocha says, champagne processed coffee, laughing. Forget making coffee accessories. You need to start selling t-shirts. Yeah, there is a champagne process. There's a whole champagne fermentation. Actually, I've had some really good, Miguel Meza, a good friend of mine, he created one a while back. And I was like, well, that's really good. Like that guy, he's really, if you get to Hawaii, you should definitely, or if you look him up, Paradise Roaster, you should try his coffee. It's really, really excellent stuff. Like I remember years ago, people used to make fun of it. Like him and I've always been friends. And I've always liked him. He's a quirky dude, right? He's a quirky guy, really interesting, really focused on coffee quality. And many, 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 many years ago, he wanted to do this coffee that everybody ridiculed, like so many people in the business ridiculed him for. Like, I mean, they were brutally, like, you know how people are brutal on the internet? Like, they're totally brutal on him. Like, so he wanted to create this coffee called the R. Miguel coffee. And it had a very, R. Kelly, babyface kind of vibe to the branding and everything, right? And it was kind of meant to be luxury coffee, like super high-end quality coffee at super high-end prices. And this is what people would ridicule him for. And I was like, dude, this guy is trying to push the boundaries of what we're doing. He's trying to go beyond and bring better hipness and respectability to coffee. I don't know how people could hate on him for it. I'm sure there's still the thread somewhere out there in probably archive form somewhere that shows the hate form. But it's R. Miguel Coffee. But I've always loved what he does, and I always respect what he tries to do. So. I mean, and we're talking like Jay-Z kind of stuff. Like, you know, Jay-Z released a cigar and he released a champagne. It's all super expensive. This is the kind of stuff he was trying to do. Like it was like if Jay-Z released a coffee. Marco says, "Oh, it's real. Oh, yeah. They will use champagne yeast. So what they're doing is they're taking champagne yeast and adding it to the fermentation process to affect it. I know some people will drink it and they'll say that it has this champagne-like effervescence. I just don't see how that's possible. Like it's a champagne yeast. The way that champagne has its effervescence is because of its not dosage, but the riddling that happens, or the natural carbonization of the wine. So I don't know. I think people see that champagne natural process, or they say champagne processing, and it tastes like champagne. No, it doesn't taste like champagne, dude. It can't taste like champagne. It's not Chenin Blanc. Crazy. Craig says the only naturals that I like are very, very clean, so they taste close to. Like, I guess the only kind of naturals you probably like are the ones that were grown, the wash coffees that were grown next to blueberry trees. You're like, oh, okay, that's got a hint of blueberry. That's enough. That's enough for me. But I remember when I first got in the business, like, I met some guys. They were totally like, oh, champagne. They were like, natural processes are the worst. It's like, what? It's like, really? It's like, I like that stuff. But I would imagine that they were the guys, the old school guys that looked at people like me at the time, the young Turks in the business at the time, who were like, you know, we were the young guns, man. We were like, you know, Emilio Estevez coming into the scene with Kiefer Sutherland. And they were probably thinking, look at these guys. Look at these idiots. They think that natural process is good. What's wrong with them? Espresso. Who needs espresso? Much of how we look at young bucks today. They're like, you know, who are these guys with their light roasting coffee? Silliness. Get more development. Get sweeter coffee. Be real about your coffee. That's what we do. That's what we do. Oh, actually, this is getting, as it's cooling down, getting really nice. So we're losing that. We're losing some of the heavier body. Now it's just getting more rounded, very pleasantly. Drinking some of those tones of the natural coffee are not pronounced, but I think the natural is what's smoothing out the coffee here. That's getting kind of nice. All right, very good. Very good. All right. So I don't know if that answers the questions. Let me see if did I catch everything? I know that. Have I gotten? Are there things that you might have? Are there things that about this idea of blending and our question today that I've left out, that I have not answered? Unless you portion each bean for each cup, okay, help me understand why blending. I mean, why blending is a thing. Blending is a thing just because some people like it. That's all. Doesn't have to. If you're someone that doesn't like blends or doesn't want to do blends, you just want to buy beautiful single origin coffees and that's all you need, well, that's all you need. There's no reason to buy blends. Like, it's all about what you enjoy, right? Again, pleasurable hedonism. That's all we want, right? That's all we want. That's all we want, just to enjoy ourselves. Sometimes we just don't enjoy ourselves by ourselves. Naomi says, I had a tasting of coffee once that had a nice aroma of blueberries, but I didn't taste it in the coffee. I enjoy. I see. You're probably one of those people like me that are true connoisseurs of coffee. But so, and here's to that point though, like there's only been a couple times in my times tasting coffee when I've actually had that really strong blueberry. Like this is a very nice natural, but it doesn't have that blueberry tone. Like it may suggest berry notes, which may or may not be true blueberry aromas, or maybe you're interpreting it that way. I mean, it could certainly be both, right? But I've only really had maybe 2 or 3 coffees ever that really had strong blueberry, clear, beautiful blueberry tones. Once in 2003 with this Ethiopian horror at Stumptown Coffee Roasters in Portland, Oregon. The next was the 2007 Idito Misty Valley. And I think that was it. I've never had it since. I've been looking. Like there's a lot of great naturals that have nice, but that really crystal clear blueberry, gosh. Craig's nightmare, but my dream. Naomi says, today's coffee was very educational. Oh, well, thank you. At least you get some value from coming and hang out with some guy on the internet talking about coffee. All right, well then, I guess that's going to be it for today. Today's Thursday, so tonight, if you have the time, 8 p.m. Eastern on the Ono live channel, so many channels now, that we do the Thursday night hang with the coffee and cigars live stream. So we talk about coffee, and actually we talk more about cigars than coffee. So if you don't have an interest in cigars, then it's probably not worth it. But we do a little bit of coffee, only because we're just trying to tie it in. But today's cigar, I have to figure that out. But today's cigars will be a nice one. So come join us if you have the time. And if not, come back again. Be back again tomorrow, 10 a.m. for the coffee Q&A. Hope you have a great one, and see you next time.